Magnus is back and he's playing the Sicilian defense. No opening dodgy stuff in this game. He's going solid and he wants to win here. Now his opponent is the 24-year-old Austrian GM Valentin Dragnev, and it's Norway versus Austria European Team Chess Championship. And after knight f3, knight c6, we see this Rossolimo on the board, and Magnus's opponent did not get the memo here. Magnus is 250 points higher rated. He should be walking this one, right? On paper, well, that is not what happens. What a battle this game turns into. So we see e6 from Magnus. Now we get castles. The knight comes here, supporting the other one. And after rook e1, the bishop prepares to nudge back. And Magnus doesn't go a6, the most common move. He jumps in with this knight. We see captures, pawn takes, now c3, challenging that annoying pawn in the centre. Magnus kicks this bishop, it drops back, and then he supports his central pawn. And we get this fascinating position on just move 10, because after b4, bishop e7, a4, castles, white is just storming it on the flank already. Magnus has to try and get something going in the centre. So we see knight a3 now played. A knight on the rim is dim, but here it makes sense. It's coming back into the game like this. So Magnus takes on c3, the pawn recaptures, and he brings this bishop to the diagonal, scything down, attacking this newly weakened pawn. So bishop b2 covers, and it looks like a blunder, as if you can take here, and if pawn recaptures, you pick up a bishop. But the problem is this intermezzo. Now these are both attacked and you're gone as black. So no knight takes here. We see pawn d6, covers e5. Now queen b3, very harmonious development. Queen c7, both rooks hit this half open d file, and now knight c4 sets up a big positional threat to go pawn a5, clamp on these dark squares. So Magnus goes b6, and now this knight nudges back to e3. That is one lovely knight just sitting on the third, looking in all of these directions here. Very nice play from white. Magnus develops with bishop b7 and now knight g4. And this is the epic thing about knights, right? Is sometimes they have to go on a circuit to reach a promised land, but once they get there, they can be devastating. You know, they're not instant long-range weapons like bishops. So this one is hit. Magnus goes bishop g5 and now c4. Look at this central space for white. These space invader pawns marching down the board. You've now opened this bishop, and now Magnus is in some trouble here, bit of pressure. So what does he do? He goes to the tried and tested, the reverse plough on the board. Magnus going for it. Now, if you're not following that reference, check out the recent videos I posted this week. Just a bit of fun, right? But Magnus is just playing these awesome, uncommon openings using these H-pawns here. Now, he's doing it right now to kick this pesky knight. And does white retreat it? Well, no. First, we see queen c3, setting up the battery, threatening mate. Magnus makes the cardinal sin and plays pawn f6. Never play f6, Ben Feingold says. Now, you do need to do something about the mate here, although the computer preferred e5. And now white plays this astonishing double pawn sacrifice. This is just epic from the lower rated player. And it starts with pawn h4. You could have just retreated the knight. Now that bishop has to take. There's nothing better. But then this queen slides over using both sides of the board as the canvas here. You hit the bishop. So this knight takes, the bishop drops, and Magnus picks up a second pawn. Why is white chucking away so much material? Well, there's a huge attack coming. And the pawn isn't even recaptured straight away. This rook first lifts into the game, daring Magnus to hang himself with pawn f5, trying to hold on to this one. If you do that, it's terrible. You open this diagonal for the bishop, and after pawn takes, you open the e-file for the rook. So Magnus goes e5, the correct move, trying to make this bishop bite on granite. Now the queen picks up the pawn, so white's just one pawn down. We get bishop c8, Magnus attacking that queen, going on the defensive. It slides over to h4, and now bishop e6, looking for some defensive action around the king. You see the evaluation bar react, by the way, because the computer wanted g5 as the top defensive move. But that is a scary one to play, pushing more pawns in front of your own king. We now get rook g3, threatens queen takes on f6 using the pin. So this rook covers the square. Again, you see a reaction. You know, the computer preferred queen f7, but okay, human chess. Now bishop c1. This bishop doing the same as Magnus's, re-maneuvering into the game, threatening this move here. And so rook a7 from Magnus, adding defense to that g7 pawn, and bishop e2. This sniper comes out from being dormant, reactivating into the game. Queen d8 from Magnus, and it sets up a sneaky defensive idea to now go g5. And with the extra support of the queen, the sacrifices here aren't quite working, especially because the rook then slides across to the defense. And so that's why rook g6 was played, sitting on this pawn, not letting Magnus push and liberate. And if you go bishop f7, I dare you, because then you can crash through like this. Epic kind of Garry Kasparov attacking style, and all sorts of nasty stuff starts happening. Losing in exchange, the attack rages on. So Magnus does not go back with this one. He lets the rook sit there, and he starts taking more defensive measures. So defending the base of his chain. Now king h2 played. There's a lovely maneuver going on. Rook f7, this rook slides, Magnus gets his running shoes on, and now the king steps back. There's one way to castle right, but in the opposite direction. Excuse me, losing my voice. And now king e7 responds to the invasion of the queen, and this queen nudges back to g3 rather, pressuring this pawn here. So the queen covers, and now there's so many nice attacking ideas for white. You know, you could bring this bishop in, although then the king steps back. You could even bring the rook here, using the fact that the pawn is pinned. You know, you take the queen, so you threaten to invade, but then Magnus slides back. You know, he's just holding on by the skin of his teeth. So white decides to go for this one. Pressure b6. So many horrible loose pawns. Magnus covers this one. Now a great move by white. Once again, I mean, who is this guy, right? He should be like 2700 plus. I mean, is he wearing a watch or what? You know, I'm joking. So he goes pawn f4, just turning the screw on Magnus. Now he's a bit down on the clock, but still he's bringing the fight to the world #1. Now there is a threat to go f5 in a lot of different lines, and that's a good defensive piece. Plus, in some lines, this interrupts the connection between the heavy pieces. So Magnus takes. The computer doesn't love it, but you know, this is human chess. Now we see bishop captures, the pawn pressured, so the rook covers, and now rook h5. I love how Dragnev just activates these heavy pieces, these cannons blasting in all directions. Finally, Magnus brings this knight back into the game. It's been sat on this square for 15 moves, and now queen h4 played, looking to invade with that rook. You know, nudging back one move. The evaluation bar doesn't love it. The computer wants a5 here. A very deep idea, distracting the knight, then preparing e5, an even deeper idea, just trying to rip stuff open towards the king. You know, really amazing lines, but I won't go down all of that. So queen h4 played, rook d8 to cover that back rank. Now queen f2, you know, amazing geometry here, just switching around. All these moves, actually I think it came from g3, didn't it? But this one now pressured, the rook covers. Now this idea is thrown in, Dragnev finds it, he plays pawn a5, just fantastic attacking chess. If this pawn captures, then the c5, you're using this pin. If you capture, the queen takes and invades. You know, it's really, really good for white. So Magnus takes with the knight here, and now the favourite move of the engine is queen g3, because you threaten the pawn like this, but also this one, etc. But queen d4 played, very natural, centralising. Queen d8 covers, only sensible move, but now the rook invades, and this pawn is dropping. You know, you can't come back and cover. You can't cover all the bases of the chains and the weaknesses. So the knight comes back into the game. We see queen d2, g2, queen c7 played, and now this pawn collapses. White is only still one pawn down, and they're breaking through to the king. Rook f8 played. Bishop h5, preparing to win the exchange. And now Magnus doesn't try and save this rook. If you take here, rook recaptures, say you block with the bishop, well, these tactics are awesome. Can you see the shot here for white to win the game on the spot? There's a great kind of overload sacrifice thing going on. So the move you should play is bishop takes. Well done if you found this one, because after queen takes, forced, or you're going to lose your queen, now you take the rook and distract the king from the defense of the queen. And if you try and avoid that and stay with the queen, well, same tactical idea. You're forced, you're losing that queen. So you have to let the exchange drop. Magnus drops back the knight, the exchange is taken, the rook recaptures here. I was about to say knight, but no, we get a pair of rooks now coming off the board. Now the knight hops to f7. The knight is a great defender of the king, and although white is an exchange ahead, there's a number of weak pawns here which are about to drop. So after queen b4, the computer preferred queen f2 to target here and here, but this one played. Magnus takes here, this one falls, and actually now the smoke clears, Magnus has got 2 pawns for that exchange. So a technically level material balance. Now this pawn wasn't captured. You know, you have to stay with the bishop. So instead, the rook comes to the back rank, looking for some nasty stuff around the king. So Magnus goes bishop d7, a defensive maneuver, and now bishop f2, moving away from this queen's attack, preparing to activate the queen, and so Magnus goes queen d3. We get rook g3 played, hitting that queen, and check. King h2, check. Is Magnus going for the repetition? Well, good news, guess what? No, after king g1, he goes queen b5. He wants to fight on in this game. And if you're enjoying, do hit that like, really helps me out. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so. You're less likely to miss a future video, and again, really helps me out. So here, the queen exchange offered, but declined. We get the check. Magnus gallops in with his knight, centralizing. Rook g7 check. King e6. Now watch Magnus's king. This is incredible. We see check and king d5. Magnus going on a wander with that king. Queen h7 played, targeting the bishop. Now surely the knight has to stay with the defense. Well, no. We get f5 on the board. Best move. Now bishop g3, targeting the defender of the bishop, and knight g4. And Magnus is suddenly going on the counter-attack. He's covering these squares with the knight. So if you capture that bishop, this is mate in 2. Look at that one. Just incredible how he turns the tide on these things at times. So queen g8 check played, bishop e6, check, and king d4. Are you kidding me? The king just going on this wander into the enemy position now. We get queen a7 check. Now king d3, and here white has to find a very important defensive resource, which was played rook b7, stopping queen b1 check and mate that it leads to. And in this position, Magnus can go queen a5 to try and carry on attacking, but then there's rook b1, etc. So Magnus goes check. Forking queen and king, we see captures, and the players did agree a draw here. So there was a peaceful result, but an epic fireworks game. I hope you enjoyed this one. Dragnev playing out of his skin. Thanks very much for watching, and if you want to see another epic game of chess, check out the video on screen, and I hope to see you again soon.